traveling the state to bring you the important issues facing Mississippi. This is the Mississippi Hometown Network.
As always, our Capitol briefings are a fun opportunity to come over here from a few of our legislative leaders about what's ahead in the upcoming session. And as is tradition, we'll kick it off with our Speaker of the House, Philip Gunn. In the time that he has been serving as Speaker of the House, there's no question that he's worked very closely with us on a variety of issues with a single focus of how we can really improve the business climate in the state of Mississippi, what we can do to actually improve our educational system, and how we work through improving workforce. There's a variety of things in legislation that has passed through the House that he has helped drive in terms of workers' comp reform, in terms of teacher pay raise, in terms of making sure we have a strong infrastructure. All of those things matter in terms of making Mississippi a better place. And we're fortunate to have someone like Speaker Gunn in this role. So please join me in welcoming Speaker Philip Gunn.
Well, good morning. It is my privilege to be able to welcome you to the Capitol today. We always seem to gather on the first 2 or 3 days of the session. There's a lot of excitement and activity. Everybody's fresh. They've been rejuvenated over the holidays, and there's a lot of energy. Come back in 3 months, and you'll see a lot of ragged, tired people. But we're glad to have you here today. Appreciate y'all making the effort to come. We are working hard this week trying to get organized, especially in the House of Representatives. I don't know how many of you have followed what's going on there, but we've had a lot of departures for a lot of good reasons. A lot of my members have been selected to go serve in other capacities. A lot of them ran for judges in November and got elected. Some of them have retired and moved on to other things. So I've got we had about 5 new people yesterday that I had to assign committees to and reorganize some of my committees. And I think that's a good thing. I said yesterday to a group that I spoke to that I'm honored that when the governor chooses to pick somebody to fill a new role, like Mark Formby at the Workers' Comp Commission, or Herb Frierson, Department of Revenue, or Andy Gibson at Department of Agriculture, he seems to come to the House to get the people that he's picking. And I think that speaks to the quality of the leaders we have in the House, those that are serving. And I'm proud of that. As I said, 3 of my members got elected as judges in the November election. So we have a group of people, I think, that serve well in a variety of capacities, and I'm honored that they are able to move on and do greater things. But that causes me to have to get reorganized and redo committees, and we're in the process of doing that. We're going to refer bills soon. That's a process that takes a lot of time. We probably have in the House about 1,500 bills that are filed. These are 1,500 ideas that legislators have that they think are going to improve the state of Mississippi. Statistically, about 200 of those will make it out of committee, and a little over 100 of those will probably end up getting signed into law by the governor. So that just gives you a little idea of the amount of work that we have to do this time of year. We start out with 1,500 bills. We have to consider those, debate those, whittle those down to a workable number that we can actually pass on the House floor. And that process will take place basically over the next month. We'll get to the point where we've done that. It's a very busy time, a lot going on, and glad to see each of you here today. What I want to do is kind of address last year and MEC's role in last year and your stated goals. How many of you in this room know what MEC's agenda was last year? Okay. There were 3 things, 2 of which we took on in the House of Representatives. One was to rewrite the education funding formula. That was a stated goal of MEC. I'm proud to say that those of us in the House undertook that and actually accomplished it. We sent it to the Senate where it unfortunately died. But as far as meeting the goal of MEC, I think those of us in the House took what you viewed to be a concern of yours, and we did it. One of the second things you did or stated as your goal was a new road and bridge funding formula. And we in the House took charge of that issue as well, and we led out on that issue. The bill that was ultimately passed in the special session in August was a House bill. It is the same bill we passed in the legislative session in 2017, last January, a year ago. We started from that point and we brought forward a bill that we believe is going to provide a continuous stream of revenue for cities and counties forevermore. And that is a good thing. I will tell you the Municipal League and the Board of Supervisors are all thrilled with the legislation that we passed. It's going to provide about $120 to $130 million a year from now on that will be divided between cities and counties, and it will help them to solve their infrastructure problems. We defined infrastructure as water, sewer, roads, and bridges. That is a stated goal, was a stated goal for this organization. MEC declared that to be one of their goals, and we in the House of Representatives rose up and met that goal as well. There were 4 people who were instrumental in making this happen. I want you to know who they are. I want you to see their faces and associate their names with the bill that was passed. Any piece of legislation always requires a champion. Somebody's got to get behind it. Somebody's got to research the issue, develop a plan, understand the plan, go to the committees, and champion the bill. Does anybody in here know how the legislative process works? If you do, raise your hand. All right, come up here. Come up here and explain it to me. I may have told this story in here before, and if I have, I apologize, but it is one of my favorites. We had a group of 3rd graders that came to the Capitol once upon a time. Have you heard this story before? Some of you have. A group of 3rd graders came to the Capitol. Teacher wanted me to speak to them. I said, "What you want me to talk about?" She said, "I want you to tell them how a bill becomes a law." I said, "Oh gosh, are you sure?" And she said, "Oh yeah, they need to know this." I said, "They're in the 3rd grade." She said, "But this is the gifted class. They understand, they're smart, they can get it." I said, "Okay." So I go to the drawing board and I start drawing out how a bill becomes a law. It starts when a legislator comes in with an idea. They go to see the attorney drafts up the bill and sends it to the speaker. The speaker then assigns it to the chairman of the committee. Chairman of the committee assigns it to the subcommittee. The subcommittee considers the bill. If they like the bill, they pass it out to the full committee. If the full committee likes it, they pass it out to the full House floor. If the House passes it, then it's then sent to the Lieutenant Governor's office, where he assigns it to the chairman of the committee. Chairman of the committee sends it to the subcommittee. If the subcommittee likes it, they pass it out to the full committee. If the full committee likes it, they pass it out to the full Senate. If the Senate passes it, it goes to the governor for signing. But if the Senate changes the bill, it comes back over to the House for concurrence or non-concurrence. If we concur, then it goes to the governor for signing. But if we don't like the changes, we send it to conference. In conference, the lieutenant governor puts up 3 senators. I put up 3 House members. Those 6 individuals sit in a room and hammer out the differences. If they come to an agreement, they produce what's called a conference report. Conference reports then return to both sides for consideration. If they like the bill and both sides pass it, then it goes to the governor for signing. But at any time, if the governor vetoes the bill, it's returned to the House of origination for consideration. If they override the governor by 2/3 vote, then it goes to the other side for consideration. If they override by 2/3 vote, then the bill becomes law. Any questions? 3rd grader sitting on the front row raises his hand. I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "You like pizza?" I said, "Yes, I do, and you're qualified to be a legislator." So my point there is, you have to babysit your bill. When you file a bill, you have to hold its hand and walk it to the committee and then to the subcommittee. And you have to talk to that chairman, and you have to talk to those committee members and convince them it's a good idea. Then you go to the full committee and you do the same thing there. Then you go to the House floor and you do the same thing there. And then if it passes and goes to the Senate, you as a House of Representatives member has to go over to the Senate and do the same thing there and talk to that subcommittee chairman and the full Senate. And you work the bill, and you have to work it and hold its hand and walk it through the process. And if something of this magnitude, it took that kind of effort to do the road and bridge plan. And there were 4 individuals that kind of carried the football on this. And you didn't know who they are. And I've got them here with me today. I want to introduce them to you so you'll put names with faces. My buddy Mark Baker, right here from Brandon, Mississippi, is chairman of Judd A. Mark and I got elected together in '04, and Mark's running for Attorney General, in case you haven't heard. But he was one of the lead forces behind this bill. I got Chairman of Transportation, Mr. Charles Busby, right over here from Pascagoula, Mississippi. Then we got Mr. Jason White from West Mississippi, who is the Chairman of the Rules Committee. And Mr. Trey Lamar from Senatobia, Mississippi, who is the Vice Chairman of Ways and Means. You need to know these four guys are the ones that actually worked that bill. They birthed the idea, they developed the policy, they worked the floor, they did all those things that I just mentioned, and this would not have happened without the efforts of these four individuals. So I want to congratulate them and let you see who they are. Looking forward to this year, I know one of the items on your agenda, how many of y'all know what your agenda items are for the year? Okay. Workforce development, premises liability. Those are the two things you stated as your agenda items for the year. Workforce is something we've been diligent about in the House of Representatives for quite some time. We, again, want to make that an emphasis. We have put, I think last year, $50 million into workforce development. I've got my chairman sitting over here, Mr. Donnie Bell. Stand up, Donnie, so they can see how pretty you are. Donnie is my former desk mate. I sat by him for many, many years, and that was the impetus for me to run for speaker so that I could get away from him. But Donnie is the chairman of my committee. He does a great job, and we too want to make that an ongoing. That's not just a one-year item, ladies and gentlemen. That's an every year item for us. Every year we're looking at how do we improve it, how do we make it better. I'm hosting a summit later this year after the legislative session on workforce development. I would get you that information, would love for you to come and participate. I had a summit in October on human trafficking. I want to mention that. That's an item that's near and dear to my heart. We're going to run with a bill this year to try to put an end to human trafficking in Mississippi. I did not realize how broad that it is. It is a scourge on our society. It's in every town, and we cannot ignore that it exists. And there are young people in this state that are being exploited and abused, and we've got to stop it. So we're going to pass a bill to deal with human trafficking. I had a summit in October dealing with that. My next summit is going to be on workforce development. I also noticed that premises liability is one of the items that you've put forward, and we too are going to address that as well. I'm an attorney by training. I have had a lot of premises liability cases in my profession. I have defended a number of cases. My favorite illustration of the need for premises liability is an apartment complex that I defended in a lawsuit filed by a young man who was committing an armed robbery. And in the process of committing the armed robbery, he got shot. And he sued my client for not protecting him while he was committing the armed robbery. That highlights the need for premises liability, ladies and gentlemen. So we're going to address that issue. It's something that we've got on the radar screen, and I wanted you to know that. I know I've taken a lot longer than my allotted time, but I appreciate you listening to me. It's always great to see you. I look forward to seeing you at lunch later today. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Gray Tollison from Oxford, and this is my 24th and last session in the legislature. I started out in 1995. I was 30 years old when I qualified, and 31 when I was elected, and then I'm 54 now. So you can see the gray coming in. Being down here certainly ages it a little bit, but I had the privilege of serving on education all that time, and I'm chair now, been the chair for the past 8 years. And so I've seen the development of education, K-12 education policy. And I tell you, one of the things I've seen is in the early part of my time, the legislature had a real hands-off position. We would listen to the State Department of Education saying, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, but we need more money. And about when Governor Barber came in his second term, things started to change, and then the lieutenant governor and the speaker came in 2012, and people started asking questions. What are you doing with the money? Why aren't we seeing results of improved student achievement? We started focusing on the outputs instead of the inputs. And in 2013, if you remember, was a real busy session for education. We passed the Literacy-Based Reform Act, which had a third grade reading test at the end of third grade to, surprise, surprise, make sure our third graders are reading. You would think that was already going on, but unfortunately it wasn't, because there was no accountability. We passed that, the Literacy-Based Promotion Act, and gave $15 million in that year, and today that's over $90 million to make sure our K-12, K-3 teachers are teaching the essential components of reading. We're training teachers every year in the essential components of reading. We also passed an A through F grading scale to make sure you and everybody in the community knew how their schools and school districts were doing. How many of y'all are familiar with that what your school is? It makes a huge difference. Yes, it's at one grade, but that grade has a lot of metrics that come to that grade. And you can look at that on the Mississippi Department of Education's website. Now you know how your schools are doing it, and you'll get even more information in the coming year about how much each school building is spending. Well, we had the A through F grades, the Early Literacy Act. We also had the Early Learning Collaborative to provide funding for 4-year-olds. And then additionally, we had school choice, charter schools. In those school districts where they weren't getting the job done, we said, we're going to try something else. And now you know we have, I think, 4 charter schools in the Jackson school area, and then 1 up in Clarksdale, a K-2. So let's look ahead 5 years now. What do we see? Do we have any results? We do. And one of the results is a NAEP, and I'm sure you've heard this. I think Dr. Wright may have talked about it. 4th graders in Mississippi are way above the national average in terms of growth from 2009 to 2017. We are making news across the country in what we're doing with our students are doing. And look, it's not the legislature. We're not doing it. It's teachers that are doing it, educators are doing it, students doing it, it's parents doing it. All the legislature is doing is saying, we want more. We want accountability. And it has paid huge dividends. You talk about an educated workforce, it starts early. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I have a friend in the furniture industry up in Pontotoc County. He tells me all the time, Gray, I just got to keep these people showing up to work. That's the main thing. And showing up week after week. They'll work 1 week, then they're gone. So it's not only just academics, it's the soft skills, as y'all know. Communications, showing up to work. And guess what? One of the other things we've demanded is attendance in our schools. Imagine that if we increased, and let me tell you, that information is available on the MDE website as well. We don't have good attendance in a lot of areas, but if you practice making sure young people are in school, guess what? When they get out of school and they go to work, they're going to have a good habit of showing up to work every day. And so a lot of these things that we can work on to work towards a good educated workforce is in our K-12 schools. The last thing I'll leave you with, how many of y'all are on a school board in Mississippi? Raise your hand high. I want to see high. Okay. Is there one maybe back there? Okay. Do this for me, and I ask you, know about your school board, who's on your school board, and get involved if you're not already. And if you're an employer, ask about your employees and what's going on in your schools. It is your school, you're paying property taxes, your business is paying property taxes. Be involved. I feel like sometimes there's a disconnect between our schools back at home and our businesses, our community, not all of them, but some of them. But go back home, find out who's on your school board, and get involved either through your school board or something else. And that will help improve our schools across the state. We've got a lot of good things going on. We've got great educators who are committed. But one thing, they can't do it all. We as a community have to work with them to support our young people to make sure we have a growing, educated workforce going forward. So thank y'all for all you do.
So welcome back to the Capitol. We're glad you're here. You're really important in what we're going to do in Mississippi. So I started asking you for surveys. What's important to you? What do you want us to do? What can we bring to the legislature for them to address? And when I did that, I started getting feedbacks. And the first ones y'all sent me were 1,800 of them replied. These are LLCs and corporations. These are you, the ones that write the fronts of checks, hire people, employ people in Mississippi. So you all went through this process, and then I asked you for another survey and the fourth survey, 5,600 of you replied. 5,600 corporations and limited liability companies replied to this survey. And what we were looking at was to try to quantify what we need to address. And Andrea and the governor have been working on things that you'll see right here, your voice back to us. First one, please, ma'am. When we first started, if you can see that, we asked you what was the most important thing. It was an educated workforce. If you could look, there's two, there's one on either side there. It's an educated workforce. And the second thing that was most needed by Mississippi businesses was a community support. And you'll notice with some entrance all the way down to number 9 was a lawyer. So I'm just telling you, lawyer's place, I used to be one. I'm a recovering lawyer, and I noticed they've placed 9th here, which is probably okay. But in any way, financial services and whatnot, Dan, were in there. And if you look all the way there, educated workforce and community support, the ones on the left are LLCs, the ones on the right are corporations. Green LLCs, red are corporations. So if you go to the next one, this is in December of 17. Then if you had an educated workforce, would you expand in Mississippi? This is something the governor's been talking about forever. Yes, 60% of you, if you had somebody who would work for you that was part of your educated workforce, you'd hire them today. And that shows in the governor's Mississippi Works program and the thousands and tens of thousands of jobs that are open. So then we kept going. We kept asking you questions. What qualities are the most important in an educated workforce? So let's start to hone down. I need an educated workforce. I'm willing to hire somebody. What are you looking for? And this information came here in May 2018. And you can see it's honesty, integrity, timeliness, communication skills. Those were the most important. Technical skills were the fourth. So what you're telling us, the people that are in the legislative branch and the executive branch, you're telling us, look, these are the skills we need. You give us these skills and we'll train our own people. And you have started doing that in time after time, over 100 different workforce training from different societies and groups of, and professions that are starting that process. Next one, please, ma'am. So you see here, how much have you participated in an educated workforce? If you could participate in K-12, have you done so? And we found very few of us were doing that. Very few of our Mississippi businesses were doing that. Next one, please, ma'am. So we came back to you. Have you connected? This is 3 weeks old. This is the 5,600 businesses. So what I'm giving you has a standard deviation of about 1. This is what people in Mississippi, this is what you as a business person believe. LLCs, again, on the left, a blue would be your corporate structure. Have you connected with the CTE? Now, Andrea and the rest of them have been working really hard, Laurie and the rest of them, continuing technical education. Have you connected with them? And we find ourselves, no. This will change. This number, this 70% number will flip to the other 30%. And without that, as you'll see, you won't find your educated workforce. They're there, you just need to ask them. So when a group, Katie McCreary called me from Columbus, I went up to Columbus. She wanted us to moderate between a group of businesses and the school. They're just building a new career technical institute there. Would we come up, 50 companies showed up. And they brought with them, this is what I'll hire, this is what we want to do. And one of the individuals in the school said, I didn't know y'all needed this. If you would have called me, I would have started work on this. And one of the businessmen at the other side said, your schools are not giving us what we need in an educated workforce. And I thought, we need to get these people together. You know, they're talking in different silos here. So we did. And when you see this right here, have you connected? That's where your workforce is. We're at virtually full employment. The governor's got it at 4-point-something% employment. Your workforce is in those high schools. The ones that go and participate in public education in those schools are getting the opportunity to get first choice of those young men. Katie had 8 of them out to, she's runs a construction company up there. They had 8 of them work around, and of course the top 2 that were most interested, they offered them a job. So they're getting the good employees right out of school. That 10th, 11th, and 12th grade is coming. Next one, please, ma'am. What is the average age of your employees? In corporations, over 50% of us are over 45. The national average is 42. But in Mississippi and corporations, over 50% are over 45 years old here. So it used to be, maybe 10 years ago, we were in the high 30s, and now we see we've graduated out to over 45. We have an aging workforce to some degree here. Next one. What would be most helpful in determining whether a high school graduate become a successful employee? Look at that. It didn't register on GPA. It didn't register on what their high school grades were. It registered on whether or not they had integrity, honesty, and communication skills. It's not even close. It's like 75, 80%. How are you going to judge your new employee? That's how you judge them. Not so much whether they had a high ACT test. As you know, we all take the ACT test in 11th grade now. Whether they had a high ACT test doesn't really matter if they had the other skills. You were willing to work with them. Very interesting to me, where we emphasize what we're working on with our workforce. Next one, please, ma'am. Are you willing to consider training an applicant who has been a convicted nonviolent felon? Now, I'll tell you, 20 years ago, this would have been different. Look at that. Over 50% of Mississippi LLCs and corporations would hire a nonviolent felon today. They're looking for people who maybe have been out of the workforce or chronically unemployed, or in this instance, maybe even in prison. They'll bring them. They'll hire those people. You're willing to take that step to give them a second chance. So we need to bring them to you with some type of skill that you can then multiply and bring forward. More than half of you in Mississippi. Very interesting, and particularly in light of what the governor's done on criminal justice reform. What comes, if you had anybody else to call today, what would they apply? And you can see what incentives are you willing to give. These incentives were all over the board, but rarely did we have more than 50% of you give health care. Of course, one of the most expensive ones, you can see overtime, vacation pay, but as you see, the percentages are all less than 50%. In Mississippi, when you get a job, and again, the left ones are LLCs, the right ones are corporations, you can see that many times in our LLCs, we do not offer health care. Those are changing as well as we have a tighter market and employees are looking for companies that provide them those additional benefits. One of those, carpooling, baby services, that kind of things, where they have child care. Those things are starting to multiply in Mississippi where they haven't in the past. But still, we're less than 50% at that. You can see that in the numbers. Next one, please, ma'am. I think that's the last one. Is that the last one for us, Leah? Good. We do these surveys so that you will have a voice without having to leave your desk. There are usually 8 questions. We'll be doing another set of these in the spring. It's a way for you to communicate with me on what I need to be doing in drafting business laws and whatnot, and also to be communicating with the legislature on what your assistance is. It's a clear voice for you. We intend to continue these as we go forward. I want you to know, without question, the leaders where Mississippi is going economically are sitting in here. The Mississippi Economic Council, your membership and your participation in our governing is critical. Where you start to participate in the education process is where you will continue to prosper. I encourage each of you to contact your high schools, talk to your community colleges, get those two together, talking about what your workforce is and when you need those people to come out and with what skills. With that recommendation, you will prosper. Your company will prosper. There's self-interest here, but when you do, we all do. Thank y'all so much for having me here today. Have a great meeting. Enjoy your capital.
This has been the Mississippi Hometown Network. If you have any questions, please email us.